Welcome back to the Skin Deep Podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Dupree, and we are here for the conclusion of my interview with Autumn, who is with the TIES program. It is and just listening through the interview, which I know you'll just continue to enjoy as she takes us through what it means to actually engage with a heritage journey. It kind of takes me back to the thought process of it's a poor dog that won't wag its own tail. What does that mean? That means that having pride and knowing and understanding and valuing and appreciating your culture is a good thing. It's a good thing. We should be proud of who we are, who God made us, and take steps and strides to actually understand what that means holistically. And so I know you'll enjoy the rest of the interview. Let's go deep. Okay. I'm going to take a detour, but then we're going to come back to
Of
the
course.
planning process. Let me just highlight this. You actually worked in the child welfare system here in the US
I did,
before
yes.
you. Okay, can you talk us through like what led you to decide to do that and what type of work did you do? Was it in Michigan?
It was, yes.
Okay.
Post-graduation, there is that time where everybody's getting quote unquote adult jobs. You're graduating, and I did not have a plan. I did not have a plan. I got my degree in psychology and sociology. I knew I kind of wanted to do some sort of social work, but did not have a plan. And so I went to China, did the TIES trips that summer in China, came back feeling transformed in a sense and ready to kind of take on the world a little bit more than when I had just, freshly graduated. So I became a foster care case manager at an organization called Arbor Circle here in Michigan. It was quite a job. It was it was quite the job to
Hmm.
have freshly out of graduation and freshly out of college. And my last day of like state training in Lansing, Michigan, was the day that Michigan shut down because of COVID. So, like I
Oh,
will like when I talk about this experience, nothing but love. This is one of my favorite jobs that I had. I worked on
yeah.
a very small team. It was a private organization, private agency, so it was an amazing experience. But because of all the different factors that came into, working during COVID, we were going to court on Zoom,
Yep.
and I'm trying to track down, these bio parents, foster parents via Zoom to show me
Yep.
their living situation and um all of that thing. So I was learning a completely different job than what I applied for because we had to
Right.
change so much.
Yes.
But like I
Oof.
said, one of my favorite jobs, I got so many beautiful connections from that job. I met my best friend
Mm.
at that job, but it was so it was a lot. So, as a lot of people in the child welfare who work in child welfare, I burnt out after 2 years.
Yeah.
With on top of that, with working through COVID and all of that. Would it have been different without COVID? I don't know. But I learned a lot in that job. And I think that propelled me and kind of affirmed as well that this was kind of the career path, the kind of job I wanted. I wanted to work in adoption. I wanted to work in child welfare. I wanted to work in social
Mhm.
work. So, all in all, I'm again another experience in my life that I'm very grateful happened. Wouldn't change
Yeah.
anything about it, but yeah, it solidified a lot for me in my life, and how I wanted to go forward with everything in my career.
Yeah, to train and then be thrust into the very chaotic world of trying to transform the practice via COVID because of COVID. It was
Yeah.
hard. It was hard for everyone. What I will say is I do love that you still stayed within the field though. So although
Hmm.
you burnt out of doing that type of work, which happens, you still were trying to figure out how you could still help. And so the Skin Deep podcast and the whole purpose is for helpers. It's for
Hmm.
helpers to understand how we just can continue to build trust within the different spaces that we're in and how we're serving families. And so we're going to fast forward. We're doing the pre work, you're looking at their paperwork, you're figuring out what the itinerary is going to be. I love that there's pre-planned activities, but then there's kind of customized activities that folks can participate in. And then what?
And then we execute that itinerary. We do, before travel, like I said, it can be a large group. One year I had 70 people traveling in
My mouth
China.
is open.
And
That's a
yeah,
lot of people.
yeah, and that was my first year program management.
uh,
I look back on
welcome.
that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I did that, but again, like, throw me into the deep end, and
Yeah.
that's how I'm gonna learn the fastest. But this past summer we had 37 people, so much more manageable.
Okay.
But they're, like I said, they're families from all over the place. We try to connect them ahead of time through Zoom calls, happy hours, things like that. And then once we're, boots on the ground in China, we are going through this itinerary that we have been working on for almost a year in our heads, and, through all the document versions. And so I travel with every group through China. So, when we're going to the Great Wall, I'm with them. When we're going to Forbidden City, I'm with them. When we're going through the Hutongs, I'm with them. I bring staff with me they can be adoptees, they can be adoptive parents, they can be both. I had a
Oh,
staff member this past summer who is a Korean adoptee, but also an adoptive parent. Um,
wow.
we have people that are also, have a background in social work or therapists or things like that. These are what our adjunct staff team is. Those are the kind of people that are on our adjunct staff team. So, we are going through the trip with them. We are experiencing it with them. As an adoptee from China, like I said, every time I'm in China, it's a different experience. I'm learning something new. So with every group, it's a different experience, even though it's the same itinerary sometimes. And then they go
Hmm.
off to province. I do not go off to province with them. So when they go off to province, I set up, they have their own private guide, they have their own private driver. Again, it was that itinerary we customized with them. So if they wanted to go to, have a traditional tea ceremony, we set that up. If they wanted to go have a if I had an adoptee who was interested in martial arts, here, have a private martial arts class
Mm.
in China in your province. I had another adoptee who was
Wow.
interested in classical music. Okay, here, let's get front row seats to the symphony for you while you're in China. So,
Wow.
that province portion is extremely curated to what exactly the adoptee wants.
And
um
how long is that province
it is
part?
4 days.
Like 4 days. Okay.
Yes,
Because the total trip is
two
it two
weeks
full weeks,
Yes.
14 days?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we spent 4 days in Beijing, 4 days in province, and the rest of the time down south in a city called Guilin. And it's a beautiful way to end the trip. We're by the water, there's mountains. We do we do a river cruise down the Li River. And, we've all gotten, our province visits, they're done. That can sometimes be a high anxious point for a lot of adoptees or parents on the trip. So,
Mm.
we're going through Beijing. It's beautiful. We're on the Great Wall, but, all you can think about is, going back to your orphanage or going back to your province. So, that has been experienced. We can talk about it now. We can share in our experiences if you want to share them. But we're just living out the rest of this trip together. And that portion of the trip is always my favorite, because I think that's where we see a lot of the transformation in adoptees and even parents as well. Of like, a lot of parents didn't get to go to their child or their adoptee's orphanage when they came to pick up their adoptee. They usually weren't allowed to go to the orphanage. So now this is, their first time that
Mm.
parents have been able to see their orphanage, their adoptee's orphanage. And so there's a lot of firsts that are happening on this trip, and a lot of eye-opening things that are happening. So being able to dissect that all and come back together at the end is one of my favorite parts.
Man, so thinking about just the perspective of you working for Ties now, but then also you having gone through it, what are a couple of takeaways that you would say that people gain from experiencing a heritage journey?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the most powerful benefits or takeaways are, self discovery, empowerment, and then again, having the experience of traveling alongside people who not only share your journey but also the life experience of being adopted. As an adoptee, standing in your birth country and seeing yourself reflected in the culture and the people around you is truly life changing. And sometimes the first time that's ever happened to an adoptee in their life. And it's less about finding every answer and more about granting yourself permission to explore who you are in a deeper way. And
Mm.
that is what I think is the most
Okay, I'm
beautiful part.
sorry. That
Yeah.
that was like super beautiful. I need for you to say that again. That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. So, it's less about finding every answer and
Mm,
more about granting yourself the permission to explore who you are in a deeper way. You come on these heritage trips with a lot of questions, and sometimes you leave with even more questions. But just being able to have the empowerment, the information that you have now to go forth. I tell adoptees all the time, this trip is a stepping stone. It's not a beginning. It's not an end. How you want to go forward after this trip is up to you. And it really is up to
yeah.
you. Like, it's not up to anybody else. If the first time being back in China, if this is a trip that's like, I left my first trip telling my mom, I might not travel back to China until I'm like 35, have my own kids, want to show them where mom's from. And here I
Yeah.
am, going every single year. So
Yeah.
how ironic is that? Or it could be a trip where, I've had adoptees who, before the trip say, I'm not really interested in birth family searching. It's never been an interest for me. And then on the trip, they're like, I might put my DNA into, I might do a DNA test. I might look into some of the options that are out there. So, it's a stepping stone. And also another
Yeah.
thing that comes with this trip is and what I hope adoptees take from this trip is pride
Mm,
in coming from their birth country. That's with any
mm,
with any country out there, but with China, after the 2 weeks of traveling through China and meeting people and having conversations with people and being able to walk, around and go to these night markets and try different foods that, belong to your culture and seeing places that you've always been told, even something like the Great Wall, we all grew up knowing what it looks
yeah.
like from pictures, but being able to
Mhm.
actually be on the Great Wall. I want and I hope that adoptees take from this trip pride in being from China, especially with all the news outlets out there, all the news that's coming out about China and the stigma and coming out of COVID too, with everything that happened with
Yeah.
the Asian community. Being able to come back from China and finish out this trip again, I just hope that adoptees can take away from it that it's awesome coming from China, and it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing, and this culture is beautiful. The people are beautiful, and there is a lot of pride coming from this country. So, you
And
know,
there's nothing wrong with being proud of where you're from
no,
and who your people are. Like there's
no.
nothing wrong with that.
Yes, yeah.
I love
And
that.
what's beautiful is that the journey doesn't end when the trip does. The connections,
Mm.
the discovery, the pride, the self-discovery, the empowerment, both with the place and with the other people that you traveled with, become a part of your story that you carry forward.
Thank you, Autumn. That is amazing. Okay, so Autumn,
Yes.
someone's listening to this and they're saying, I am interested. Like, I want to explore what this means and if this is
Yeah.
something that our family can do. Where would they go? How would they take that first step?
Yeah, so with ties, you can always visit our website, www.thetiesprogram.com. We have a bunch of trips on there right now. So next summer we're going to China, Korea, Guatemala, Paraguay, and Kazakhstan. They can look at our trips on there and they can always, we have a program manager for every single program. I do China. My colleagues do all the other countries. So you can reach out to us. You can request information on our website. Once you request information, you are part of our mailing list. You'll get all the information that has to do with China or whatever country you sign up for. But we're so eager to talk to you and talk through the options when it comes to returning to your birth country, what it entails. It's not just, signing up for a trip, you're signing up for support, you're signing up for connections, you're signing up for community as well. Beyond these trips, once you join our mailing list, we do webinars, we do community online chats that we just started.
Mm,
We also have a new program that we're launching called Community and Connection, that are domestic trips or trips that are a little bit more accessible for adoptees, both domestic and international. And our first one is in March in Sedona, Arizona, that focuses on wellness. and identity work and looking into your inner self and healing that inner self. So once you're in the Ties family and you're in the Ties community, you're
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, yeah, I love that community because that's what's healing. People being a
Yes.
part of something and speaking life into one another and growing and developing and changing. And 14 days is a long time to be immersed in a thing. And so the fact that you all are building out ways for people to stay connected, that's a beautiful thing. Intentional connection. So that is beautiful. Anything else? What would you say to a parent who is considering doing this? They've adopted internationally and they're a little hesitant because they're worried about what does it mean to expose, to bring my child back to their birth country. So there may be some feelings of, I don't know, being able to hold two things that are true. They
Hmm.
can, you can expose them, you can begin this conversation, you can have this journey, and they can still love you. They can still be, proud to be in America. Like both things can exist. So what would you
Yeah.
say to someone who's kind of on the fence, a parent, perhaps?
Yeah. I mean, I would say this journey looks different for everyone, and that's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out to take the first step, whether it's traveling with, the Ties program, whether it's joining a virtual community or opening up a conversation at home. Like every step forward matters.
Yeah.
Particularly, and you don't have to do it alone either. Particularly to adoptive parents, I always kind of use the example of your adoptee or someone who's around that age learning how to drive. I always say, when you are teaching your young adult how to drive, you don't teach them by them looking at you the whole time driving. You have to put them in the driver's seat and kind of allow them to figure out what works for them. How close to the steering wheel do I want to be? Like you got to move the rear view mirror, and I want
Yep.
certain type of music on. So I think specifically to adoptive parents, like allowing, maybe daunting at first, but allowing your adoptee to take the lead when it comes to returning to their birth country. I think that's super
Yeah.
important. Centering their emotions, centering
Mhm.
the conversations they want to have, centering the hopes and dreams that they have for this trip. I think are super, super important because that is something that can sometimes be put on the wayside. Adoptees can say, yeah, I want to go back. And then the parents take it from there. And then they plan everything,
Mm.
and, all of that. So I think something that's important with Ties is like, I want to talk to the adoptee and make sure their
Yeah.
boxes are being checked. Like this is something that they're doing things that are meaningful to them and that are going
Yeah.
to meet them where they are. I think that's a huge thing, is meeting your adoptee where they are, not forcing them to be somewhere else or be someone else. I want the adoptee return to their birth country the way they want to return to their birth country. Support them however they show up.
The adoptee wanting to actually do this journey would be important in order to move things forward. So if you had an adoptee who did not want to do it, but perhaps the parent wanted for it to happen, how would you all handle that type of situation?
Open
Yeah.
communication is the most important thing. I talk to the parent first because that's usually the person that reaches out first. I always say, hey, love to schedule a call with your son, daughter, with your niece, nephew. Would love to just schedule a call with them. And if they're on the fence, I can talk to them about my personal experience. I can talk to them about my experience traveling through China. That is all I can do, is talk to them through everything. Pros, cons,
Yeah.
my personal experience, other adoptees' experience that I've worked with. And from there on, it's kind of up to them. I want them to be ready as well, because if they're going through this trip and they're just mad at me the whole time, it's like,
Right.
how much are, but that was also, I say that, but then that was also me a little bit on my first trip, just like angsty teen the whole time, just like, I'm hot, I'm sweating, and I don't know what I'm feeling. But
Yeah.
all feelings and emotions are welcomed. But I want the adoptee to be in a good headspace. Make sure that whoever supports that they bring on this trip are going to support them emotionally, mentally, physically, be able to take as much away from this experience as they can.
What are your final kind of reflections and thoughts?
We talked about a lot, Chanel. This has
We
been an amazing
did.
conversation.
It has. It has. We just met, but I'm like, I know Autumn.
Yes.
I know what's yeah, This has been awesome. This has been awesome. And it's going to be helpful for people. Number one, to just even expose them to the concept of it, and then to also dive into the nuanced feelings and thoughts and all of those different things that can also come from still a very beautiful experience. And
Yeah.
so I love that you mentioned that, because it is disingenuous when we don't share the complete picture and what it can look like for different families. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there are so many complexities that come with the experience of being an adoptee. And I think it's just so important to acknowledge all of them. And then also,
Mhm.
nurture and openly engage with the culture the adoptees come from. And that's
I
it.
love Okay. Beautifully said. Thank you, Autumn. And we'll make
Of
sure that we
course.
put the information regarding the TIES program in the show notes so that folks can check it out for themselves.
Thanks, Chanel. Have a good one.
If you are interested in learning more about the family history in America and how the child welfare system was even built, I want to invite you to dive into the online and on-demand Skin Deep: The History of Child Welfare by Race course. Because you're coming from the Skin Deep podcast community, I'll have a special discount code for you in the show notes below. Let's dive deeper on behalf of families.